Hello and welcome to the special edition of the Cricket World Cup show brought to you by Dafa News. Well, in today's show today, we're going to talk about how India played and emerged victorious against the minnows Netherlands. Well, this is not the first time that India has won the match, but India has been consistently winning the matches against Netherlands in the past two editions of the World Cup. Well, joining me are two of the more important guests, Paul Dinette from Australia and Tasveen Granger. Tasveen, just do a recap of the match yesterday and we'll go on to Paul Dinette.
Good morning to you all, and I hope you had a great Diwali yesterday, and I'm pretty sure most of you are still recovering like myself. Just to give you a heads up on what happened yesterday, India won the toss yesterday and opted to bat first. They set a total of 410 for the loss of 4 wickets. This following a great, huge double hundred partnership between Shiraz Iya as well as KL Rahul. They in turn went ahead and they scored a total runs between the two of them. You had Shiraz Iya finishing up, not out on 128 off 94 balls. You had KL Rahul just coming out towards the end on 102 just off 64 balls. So both of them played a very huge innings for yesterday after losing Rohit Sharma for 61 off 54 and Shubman Gill for 51 at the top, as well as Virat Kohli for 51 off 56. In turn, Netherlands came out trying to stick around, and take it as deep as possible, then they could, but not really coming out with much on top of that. They in turn only had one big score by Teja Nidamaru of 54 off just 39 balls. Alongside him, he had Sybrat Engelbrecht trying to lead the fight, but not really getting anywhere. They were in turn bowled out for 250 runs in just the 47.5th over. Coming from it again, India used 9 bowlers. This is only the third time ever in World Cup history.
This is where I want to get Paul. Paul, what is your memory of 9 bowlers in an ODI match? Was it like a benefit match or something?
Hey Sunil, hey Tasman. Hope everyone had a great Diwali. Yeah, I'm not sure whether we've had 9 bowlers. We certainly haven't had it in a World Cup game. There've been some embarrassing moments in the past where maybe I remember that Australia used to have Tim Zura, who was the wicketkeeper who could bowl a little bit. Maybe they did something back then. I remember Dennis Lilly actually had 9 slips once, which was a very different kettle of fish. But I think it just shows what a wonderful campaign it has been for India. And I suppose the only question mark is, if they ultimately don't go on and win, will some people look back and say there was a degree of complacency in some of the things that they did? I don't think there was, but I suppose that's always going to be something that they're open to that sort of criticism.
Well, absolutely. Do you think now India is in the same line as what Australia was in 2003 or perhaps 99?
Yeah, and I think also 2007, actually, it's a forgotten one because it was a fairly underwhelming World Cup in the sense that India and Pakistan were both eliminated quite early, and a lot of the rest of the world don't remember it. But as far as dominance goes, that's probably been the most dominant World Cup to date. I was looking back at the numbers the other day, and Australia had a net run rate that was phenomenal. And I actually put out a social media post saying that India are on track to potentially equal that. At the stage that I put it out, India's average first innings score was just lower than Australia's had been, and their average runs conceded was just higher. But having given this touch up to the Netherlands, it would now be very, very close. So if India do go on and win the semi-final and final convincingly, then you could make a strong argument that this has been the most dominant World Cup campaign of all time.
Absolutely. There were I think there were few records. There were individual but team records that were broken yesterday. Tasveen, what stands out for you the most? Because what you see on your screens are what you see in yesterday's match. But this is an interesting part. We'll come to Baz Delete and Tim Delete. Yeah, but first, what are the important records that were broken?
I think for me, one that definitely stands out is this is the first time ever for India that they've had 550s plus in an innings. As well as not just for India, but it's the first time as well in an ODI World Cup that they've been 550 plus scores just in one innings alone as well. And I feel like you don't do it much justice when you say 550s plus. The fact that there were 200s as well included in these 550s is just a big deal for me.
Well, absolutely. There were 200s, and that too coming from batters at the middle order. Now, that talks about the solidity of the batting lineup. Do you, in your assessment, Paul, does India have a strong batting lineup, or they've got a good bowling lineup? What do you think is stronger between the two?
Well, I think that their bowling lineup is so amazing. I would narrowly give it to their bowling lineup, but that's saying something because their batting lineups are very, very impressive. So it's a hard one to judge. I just think that most sides have powerful batting lineups, and I think India's is the best. But I think that their bowling lineup is there's a bigger gap between them and number two as far as their bowling lineup is concerned. And I love Tasmin's stat. It's not only was it the first time that the top five, as in 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all scored 50s in the World Cup. It was the first time that 1, 2, 3, and 4 scored 50s in the World Cup. So India broke a record and then immediately broke it again. So that shows the level of dominance of their batting last night.
Well, absolutely, the level of dominance. What I mean, Shreyas Iyer was a good revelation yesterday. Coming back from an injury and not a great World Cup, he comes back and boom, he hits those big sixes. Paul.
Well, that's the thing. That I mean, if you're trying to find anyone that might have benefited from scoring a few runs, it was Shreyas Iyer. That India have now dotted every I and crossed every T going into the finals. To the point where they're even able to give Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma a few overs and a wicket for Virat Kohli and for Rohit, which sent the crowd into raptures. So as I said, it's probably one of the artifacts of the format that you can dominate the whole way through. It now comes down to semi-finals. You could get sent home in the first game of the knockout phase. I experienced this worry as an Australian fan in 2003 and 2007 because Australia won 9 preliminary games undefeated in both those tournaments, just as India have done now. And I remember at the time thinking, this is going to be despicably unfair. If we have one bad day and get sent home packing in the semis, it will feel wrong. And that's it's the happy lot that Indian fans are going to be in at the moment, because if they do get sent home, there'll be a few questions around the format, I think.
Absolutely, around the format. But one little thing that happened while people were celebrating the centuries, Virat Kohli quietly created another record, and he's just moved on to 51. With that 51, he's moved on to the number 1 position in this World Cup in terms of the number of runs that he's amassed. Tasmin, you have some updates on the 1, 2, and 3?
On the current run record, the highest run takers right now, you have Virat Kohli currently sitting at the top of the log.
It's 593 or something?
594 at an average of 99. I'm going to keep highlighting the fact that his strike rate is one of probably the lowest in the top 10.
Yes.
His strike rate is just 88.52. He's scored a total of 55 fours and just 7 sixes. Probably again, he's got the lowest 6 count, but he finds himself sitting at the top of the log.
So what do we have? We've got the strike rate, which is perhaps the lower ones in the top rung. You've got the lowest number of sixes hit. You've got lowest perhaps numbers of boundaries hit, but at the same time, he's amassed his batting and he's now at number 1.
And his average is 99. That's the current highest average of everybody on that top 10 batting list. So it'll tell you he may not be scoring runs as fast, but he's definitely scoring runs every single game.
Well, what you have on the screen is Rohit Sharma. But before we go on to Rohit Sharma, let me just hold on our thought to Virat Kohli's this World Cup's performance. He's been accumulating runs and he's just accumulated the number 1 position, and he's been hovering on that position for some time now. Paul, do you think there is some method in madness in this ODI which looks at 150 strike rate? He's managed to hold on to his stuff and dig his heels in. Paul?
A really interesting question. I remember a few years ago, they actually put up Glenn Maxwell and Virat Kohli's overall one-day record on the screen, and Adam Gilchrist in commentary noted that Maxwell's strike rate was substantially higher. I mean, his strike rate is higher than everyone's, but that Kohli's average was substantially higher. And Gilchrist actually made the point, and if anyone's going to make it, one of the most explosive batters of all time, that he would like to see Maxwell's strike rate dip a little bit, and that he would see that the average would rise up commensurately as well. And I just think that that's where Kohli is so magnificent. That he hasn't been as scoring as quickly as other batters, but the runs have been important. The ones that he scored in the game against South Africa, they ultimately won it very easily, but it wasn't necessarily the easiest pitch. And the thing is, he has that upper gear as well. If he comes out and finds himself in a situation where it's happy hour and runs are to be just had at will, he can accelerate and score almost as quickly as anyone. Steve Smith's a little bit the same. He's not renowned for being a big hitter, but I've seen him score successive hundreds of 60-odd balls in one-day games.
Well, absolutely. 100 of 60-odd balls. Just for the benefit of our new fans who've turning into cricket and want to understand the stats and average, strike rate, everything. Tasmin, just explain to our viewers, very basic, how does the average build on when you play in a tournament like this?
Okay, so basically your average is the amount of runs you've scored entirely divided by the amount of games you've actually played, the amount of innings that you've actually been in there. Whereas your strike rate is how fast you actually accumulated those runs throughout the course of the couple of innings you played. In this case, for Virat Kohli, this is in 9 innings. So something you must understand is the other guys have got to this mark faster. For example, I'll tell you about Quinton de Kock.
Yes.
Quinton de Kock, currently, his strike rate is 109. And we know this coming because he's scored a total of 57 fours and 21 sixes. Probably he's sitting on, I'd say, the second highest sixes right now. The only other person to have done it in that many sixes is Rohit Sharma, currently in this tournament with just 24 sixes, and he's got a total of 58. So he's got the most boundaries actually for this current World Cup. And if you look at his strike rate is 121. Yep. So that'll tell you the difference is that Quinton de Kock, where his average is sitting at 66, he may not be that consistent. We know he's missed out a couple of innings in a row, maybe just getting to, I'd say, about the 30s, the 40s, but Virat Kohli almost guarantees you a 50 every single game. And the average of 99, they're telling you there's a possibility that he can come out and maybe score 100 on any given day at the current form he's in this World Cup.
Okay, you've been batting, you've been playing at the international level for over a decade and a half. Now, let me ask you, is it okay to have a lower strike rate and if the average is better? And also the second question is, in the ODI format, is it okay not to hit those big boundaries and those big sixes and still be at number one?
I think you raise a good point mentioning that this is ODI cricket at the end of the day. It's different from T20. T20, you'd pick someone with the highest strike rate, then they do an average, because at the end of the day, they don't have much time to come in, probably face too many dot balls, then recover later on. But this is 50 over cricket. This requires you to be able to bat for a longer period of time. So regardless of the fact that your strike rate may be slightly lower than your average, you want a consistent player that's going to be there. Probably cement a foundation, stick around and give the other guys the confidence to be able to come in and bat around them. This simply shows you that Virat Kohli is more than comfortable to run the singles, to grind, do the hard yards throughout most of his innings. And if it comes in his zone, he's playing a zero-risk innings and not just looking for big shots, but he's making sure that he's hitting gaps. If he's not hitting gaps, he's hitting it hard on the ground and he's pushing the sweepers, whoever he's playing against.
Well, absolutely. Pushing the sweepers for sure. What do you make of the innings, Paul, that's quite contrasting between two of the best Indian batters and perhaps two of the best ODI players of all time, Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma takes it on to the cleaners. He's got the number of sixes which are the highest. He's got the strike rate, which is Tasneem, which is one of the highest ones. Now, what do you make? How do you compare the two?
I think they're obviously both fantastic players. And I think there's a difference as well that Rohit, coming in right at the top of the order, that 10 over power play is significant with only 2 fielders out. The modern way is to really go hard if you can in those 10 overs, and then to pull back a little bit and consolidate. And often that's where Kohli is batting. I think maybe 5 years ago, it was almost getting to the point where 50 over cricket was an extended T20 and sides were trying to go hard the whole way through. I think they've realised that there's that acquisitional phase that is going to be required, because if you go hard too hard too early, you might not see out your 50 overs. And I think that's a feature of the fact that Kohli bats a little bit lower down the order than Sharma. But I think also, as I said, Kohli does have that another gear on top that we haven't always seen. I remember the World Cup, the famous game against Pakistan at the MCG in the T20 World Cup right towards the end when it was required. Kohli certainly found a way to reach and clear the boundary. But Rohit Sharma, I think he got 3 double centuries in 50-over cricket. You would have to make a strong case that if you're going to pick your greatest ever one-day side from all countries everywhere, he would be right up there as one of the opening batters that you'd choose.
Well, absolutely. One of the best and the greatest opening batters of all time for India in the ODIs. But at the same time, what do you make when you have the top of the batters who are scoring runs in abundance, and at the same time you see them rolling their arms and getting some wickets out there? What do you make of that situation, Paul?
I love it. I actually, to make a serious point, I do think that sometimes part-time bowlers aren't given enough of a go. There's a feeling of that the specialist bowlers have to do all the work, and yet sometimes when the part-timers do get thrown the ball, it's because the top liners haven't been able to do much, and it's a sort of a sign of desperation. This was very much not the case there. This was kind of a celebration, and it's probably a conserving of the energy and the preventing of illness or injury for the best bowlers as well. So I think ultimately it's the sort of thing that if India do go on to win the World Cup, this is one of the happy memories that fans will have. If they don't, then I remember actually. To give you an example of Australian sport, a few years ago there was a rugby league side that was in the final game of the season going to come first no matter what, and then they were going to go into the playoffs, and they took a player off the field, so they had one fewer player, even though there was no injury, and they didn't replace them. And afterwards the coach said, well, I just assumed what would happen if we have this crazy situation in the finals where we've got to adapt and do something unusual. And ultimately they didn't win the contest, didn't win the premiership, and people said they were being arrogant. They were, taking liberties with the game and not respecting the game enough. I don't think India did that at all, but I do think that maybe if India do get knocked out in the semi, there'll be some people who point to that and say, well, yeah, maybe they took things a bit too lightly. It's
a dreadful thought right early in the morning, just after Diwali, of India losing in semis. But anyways, we'll go to Tasneem Granger to wrap up the show with her statistical insights. Tasneem.
So just to give you a highlight on that Rohit Sharma bowling, he's the first Indian bowler to take a wicket bowling as the 9th bowler in an innings. Not only is it for India as well, but he's also the first man from any country to do it on the World Cup stage as well. Just to put that one out there for you. And I think just a few quick things to highlight for you. You currently have a father-son combination for the Netherlands leading the highest wicket taking for the Netherlands on the World Cup stage. That's Bas de Leede, who's just surpassed his father with 15 wickets. His father, Tim de Leede, sitting on 14 wickets. It's a great thing, and I think we talk a lot about just the Indian seam bowlers, but for me it's the spinners that have been quietly doing the work in the background as well. Ravindra Jadeja just becomes the highest wicket taker for India in the World Cup formats with 16 wickets. And the thing that's interesting for me is Kuldeep Yadav is not far behind. He's currently got 14 wickets and sitting number 5 on that log as well for Indian bowlers in World Cups.
So how many Indian bowlers are there at the top 10? 3, I guess?
Most probably, I agree with you. There's currently, I would say,
Bumrah.
There is. You've got
Bumrah, Shami, Kuldeep Yadav, and what? Jadeja?
Yeah, and Jadeja as well.
So we've got 4 top class bowlers in the top 15 of the World Cup. Well, this is a great sign considering we have 3 batters already lined up in the top 15 again. Well, Paul, what do you make up of the entire health status of India when you look at those 4 bowlers and 3 batters in the top 15 of this current edition of the World Cup? Come on, show some optimism.
Pretty impressive, especially, Mohammad Siraj is the one we didn't mention. He's an absolutely fantastic bowler. So, it's all roads are pointing to one direction, that India have absolutely, utterly dominated the group stage of the World Cup. If we were being scrupulously fair, this would be the end of it. It'd be like the English Premier League, and they'd be awarding India the trophy right now because they have been comfortably the best side. South Africa and Australia getting their silver and bronze, that's the way it would be. That's not the way it is, and it is a strange tournament that you have all these matches week after week where there's not really much jeopardy. Doesn't really matter whether you win every game or not, and all of a sudden, bang, 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 3 games at the end of the tournament where Absolutely. It all comes down to that. So
we are still few days. We are still few days away from that celebration, the extended Diwali celebration. But one question: do you think, which is a larger question, after West Indies of 80s, 90s? The Australia of the 90s and the 2000s, is India the third invincible in the ODI cricket of all time?
It's a very good question. Sri Lanka did go through undefeated in 1996, but I would back this side to beat that Sri Lankan side. How would this side go against the West Indies side of the 70s and the Australian side of the 99, 2003, 2007? Well, it's a very tough one. I suppose at this stage they would have to be third because the West Indies won 2 and the Australians won 3. But if India do go on and win this one, and in 4 years' time they win it again, then they'll be right in the conversation for maybe the best of all time. But yeah, I agree with you. I think at the moment they're sitting at number 3.
Number 3, the best. Would you agree, Tasneem?
Yeah, definitely. Their current form is it's spectacular. It would be very interesting to see what happens. I would definitely take them to put them up against Australia. Nothing there for you, Paul. But I definitely would think, they're definitely firing on all gears. I love the fact that, you can't just say it's a 2-man squad in Virat Kohli as well as Rohit Sharma. But they still have guys like Shiraz stepping up and showing that they're still capable of doing things. We know Jadeja more than capable as well with bat in hand in the middle order as well. So it's definitely going to be super interesting. I look forward to the semi-finals, that's for sure. They find themselves facing up against New Zealand on Wednesday as well, and that's definitely a match to watch, I believe.
Well, absolutely. That's a match to watch, and we will continue with our presentation and our statistical delight about the entire World Cup with the batting, bowling, and also the power play, how India has fared vis-a-vis the other teams. Well, that's all we had time for. I thank my guests, Paul and Tasneem Granger, for joining us right early in the morning, right after Diwali celebration. Well, keep watching NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.